there's three types of connection. You have your intimate connection, your household, typically your family, or if you don't have family, whoever your partner might be, your community, and then global. And in today's day
Mhm.
and age with online, the internet and with social media, the global community is always connecting, although not in person. And then you're tight knit home. But we've kind of lost that sense of community, right? We get takeout food instead of going out to eat. We kind of skip out on some events, that we didn't used to, or have the same situation I did where we don't have that community. And that community is what's built trusts, what builds tolerance, and builds stronger societies. And so I think it's really, really important that even people that don't think like you, right, to kind of connect with those people and to have a strong community is something we need to rebuild.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Skill Dad podcast. My name's Zach Reeser. I'm your host. And if this is your first time joining us, I want to say welcome. And if you're part of the Skill Dad Society, back for another episode. This is our podcast. I'm glad you're here. And the group's growing. I love to see it. I love to see the group growing. Love to hear stories about what you guys are taking away from the conversations that we're having on this podcast. And even more so, what you're applying. So we talk all about the things that we can listen to and learn, and we can know lots of stuff. We can be good at trivia, but the real change is going to come when we apply these things and really learn. And so I love it. Love that you guys are doing it. And let's keep rocking. We're going to keep doing that today in our conversation. So I've got a gentleman we've had a chance to talk a couple of times, and he's got an incredible story. And I think when he was telling me some of his story and what he's experienced, there's a lot of points where I was like, man, I know what that's like. I know what that vibe is. We also talk about, for those of us, which based on my information is most of us that are between that 35 to 45 group. That's like 65% of the audience, from what I can tell. And then you young guns who are coming up, just take notes and you can be ahead of the game, perhaps. When we hit that 40 mark, some things kind of start to change. We've changed, we've learned a lot of things. Our health can do some things. So what are the things that we can go and do? And being that it's kind of towards the beginning of the year and some of you still might be focused on, your hard 75 or whatever you're doing. Hey, we want to make the health focus like not just a thing we do at the beginning of the year, but a thing we do always. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And we're going to talk about that with my guest today, Mr. Ryan Schneider. So Ryan, I want to say welcome to the Scale Dad podcast, and thanks for being on with me.
Thanks, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Oh, we're going to have some fun. So Ryan, you are a dad of two, and remind me the ages.
I've got a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old firecracker of a son.
There you go. It's always the second one. Well, maybe the third too, but the second one, the little firecracker in him.
Yeah, definitely. He is, he's got different energy than I was ready for. I was not ready for him for these last few years. Our daughter was a piece of cake, just beautiful. Just kind of go with the flow, just wanted to kind of please us. This guy, he beats to his own drum, but it's made me appreciate him even more now.
Yeah. He's got to fight for attention. So he's going to go get it. Yeah.
That's right.
That's the thing that she didn't have, right? Well, you're dad of two. We talked about having coffee earlier. I haven't had mine today. You don't need yours, which is great. But we're in that kind of sleep game, especially with the young one going on. But I talked about health at the beginning of this thing. You've taken this, as a passion and now turned it into something that you're helping other dads with, other men with, other families with. And that's with an organization called Thrive 25. So I'd love to learn more about that. And then also just more of your story, let the guys know some of what we talked about. So I'm going to hand the mic to you and let you take it from there, intro yourself, and we'll just have a good conversation after that.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah. Absolutely right. So, I mean, look, I've been passionate about health and fitness my whole life, growing up as an athlete, right? Playing sports in high school and, clubs and things in college, and just kind of moved on and continued to do triathlons and all kinds of things, anything I could to stay fit, and just kind of my way of experiencing the world, right? Like way to travel and go find surf breaks all over the place, things like that. So as I came across turning 40, we moved across country from LA to Florida. And what we were just talking about, having my second son. And it wasn't anything extreme. It wasn't like some big, one event that happened. But I just started to notice, those runs weren't quite as quick as they used to be, right? I wasn't lifting maybe quite as much as I used to. I wasn't able to do exactly what I wanted to all the time. Maybe needed to spend a little bit more time on recovery. Part of that is turning 40, and part of that is being sleep deprived from my kid. And I started diving into a lot of this health research that had just been coming out, right? This is after 2020, 2021. So you have the podcasts like Andrew Huberman and all these other experts talking about what's possible with longevity, how to do that. And there was just no way I could keep up with these 2-3 hour long podcasts and all the books and content that was coming out. And I started talking to all these guys in my network that were feeling much the same way. And so what I wanted to do was, how do we take this information and kind of create the cliff notes, right? The Blinkist version, and say, what do we need to know? Because what I found is most people are like, just tell me what to do. And they want to know the science, but they don't have the time or really the inclination to go that deep in it. And so I was trying to parse that down and created Thrive 25 as a way to have 3 to 5 minute quick reads a couple times a week for people to just make sure. I just want to know that there's not some magical supplement that my buddies are taking that I should know about. Or I just want to know there's not some new exercise I should be doing or some new science thing, and just kind of be in the know about that. And then also be inspired to kind of keep going and keep doing those things. So we had been doing that for a couple of years, and yeah, just really organically started to grow an audience, probably similar to you, of just people that were finding themselves saying, yeah, I need to figure out how to take care of my body as well. Um,
Mhm.
and so, what was most interesting, I think, of that was it's not just what you eat, how much you work out, and when you sleep. We put together, a more holistic view of health because we really think it's the foundation for us being able to do everything in life, right? Being a great parent and dad, being a great partner, uh, being a great leader at work. All of that starts with us having good mental and physical health. And so we've continued to broaden the topics in which we really hit upon, and are now building out a more formal paid membership with Thrive 25.
Nice. So uh, you're right with a lot of times people just want to know what to do. You can read all the books, which you should. It's good to read. It's good for your brain. If you want to read faster, go listen to one of the previous episodes that we just had with the world's fastest reader. Funny guy. You should listen. It's not out yet, based on when we're recording today, but he was really interesting and had some really good tips on how to read faster. But the Blinkist version, I like that because there are some topics I want to really dive into, and like I want to know all the things. And then there's some where I'm like, just give me the bullet points and let me roll with it. So you guys are doing that. You mentioned that you kind of put a more formalized structure to it. Like, what are the things that you identify as, health? Because health is oftentimes can be put in a couple different buckets. Sometimes they're different buckets and they're compartmentalized, but really it's one big thing. So like,
Yeah.
how are you guys defining that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll get into what that structure is, but when you talk about health being one big thing as opposed to being compartmentalized, I look at it what we kind of call this like EMJ, energy, mindset, and joy. Am I waking up full of energy? Do I have a positive mindset? And am I actually enjoying what I'm doing today? Right. And that's really the output. I mean, there's all these, whether you're talking about wearables, whether you're talking about blood work, which we do, and all the science, all that really, really matters. But at the end of the day, those are the things we want to feel and be able to do to live our best life. And so we kind of worked backwards from there and went through this deep process of research. And we came up with 9 elements of health and longevity. And so mindset, nutrition, movement, growth. You talked about reading, right? Got to keep
Mm-hmm.
learning, got to stay sharp. So growth, sleep, connection, fun, your environment, and then science. And the science is kind of some of the stuff we were just talking about, right? Like what do I need to know? What's going on in the world of health and medicine and things that I should be doing. So
Right.
across those 9 elements, we touch upon each of those and really help guys identify, hey, I work out all the time, but man, I'm not having any fun, right? Or I might be eating all the right things, but I'm just still not feeling a positive mindset. So we kind of work with that and we help people identify a blueprint that they see, where do I want to feel inspired and empowered to improve maybe some deficits that I'm feeling right now. And then once you can get all 9 of those elements in the right order for yourself, that's really the foundation that we found can set you off into the right path for what you want to do and your own personal goals, whatever those might be, because we're all unique and different.
Right. What were the first three? I've got the last six.
Mindset, nutrition, movement.
Uh, in working with people that you've worked with and even friends, right? Because some of this started with you went into this deep dive and now everyone knew you as the guy that knew this stuff. So they're like, hey, Ryan, I've got a question. Here's the thing. And you became like the guy that I got a guy. Ryan is that guy. And so you've now taken it steps further to kind of scale it and help others. But out of these 9, I'm just curious, are there any consistencies and patterns that you're seeing with people you're working with that seem to be um, the biggest blockers or kind of areas of um, challenge for people?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think on the traditional front, even though we've moved away from hustle culture, I still don't think people are prioritizing sleep in the way they should. I think if you go on LinkedIn, you go on Twitter, all you see is like, right, Dr. Matthew Walker and all these guys talking about, how much you should sleep. And I think we talk about it, but I don't know if we're actually doing it day in and day out to actually
Hmm.
understand how much that recovery matters. Um, I think nutrition is something that even those of us that don't deal with weight issues, we just live in a world that is bombarding us with temptations of terrible food. 70% of the food in the grocery store is not good for us. Drive down the street, all you see are fast food restaurants. You watch anything on TV, all you see are commercials for that, right? So I think everyone's still trying to figure out what's the right, not diet, because that's not the right word.
Right.
What's the right plan for me to sustainably eat something that I feel satisfied and fulfilled and I like it and it's still
Hmm.
like gonna, fuel me and not poison me. Um, so I think those are like the traditional health drivers that I've seen the most with. But I think the softer ones, connecting with myself with the mindset, um, finding a strong community and people to talk to, and then am I having fun? Right? The stats around playfulness and fun and the fact that we feel the need to be serious when we become adults. It's like some crazy stat. Like I think 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds laugh 300 times a day,
Mm.
and then we as adults, it's less than 10. Right? We
Wow.
just believe we have to be this, serious professional employee or corporate executive, when really playfulness is part of being human. That's part of our evolution is connecting with other people in a way. And you start to realize you're like, life's so short. What's the point if we're actually not laughing, if we're not enjoying it with other people? So we've actually doubled down on some of that research as well, just to really reinforce that message. Like it's okay to be silly. As a matter of fact, you probably should be.
Right. So you said, okay, what was it? How much was a 4 or 5-year-old? How many times did they laugh?
They're laughing like 300 times a day, and we're in the single digits.
We're less than 10. Okay. So note to self, for the next episode, I'll come with some better jokes just to try to scale up I'm going to work to increase your laugh count by at least 20%. So if I can make you laugh twice, like you're welcome. I say that tongue in cheek, but that's really interesting because I've not like reflected on that, but it is. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that when we get older now, all of a sudden, let's play the science game with oh, there's my camera. Hello, come on. That's way too close, guys. I'm sorry. I'm coming back. Um, when we get older, now all of a sudden, we're gonna presume that that's true. Why are we more serious? I have my own ideas, but I'm curious your thoughts because you're working in this stuff.
So my thesis is in today's day and age of corporate America, Western cultures, but especially the competitive nature in the US, we need to be taken seriously to keep moving up the ladder, right? To keep being viewed, maybe even more experienced than we are, maybe, to showcase what we bring to the table. And when you let kind of being weird or playful or like kind of goofing off, that's seen as being less serious or less, successful sometimes.
Hmm.
And so we kind of bottle that up. And maybe we have certain places where we find the outlets for that. But I think, and maybe the blurring of the line is happening as we have remote work and more of the work life integration that we've had. But I think it was like, especially during the day, it was like you
Yeah.
kind of put that part of you aside. Um, and you actually realize the stats of being the best leader, and finding that vulnerability and finding that connection with your team. Fun and laughter is a big part of that. That's a
Yeah.
big way in which humans actually connect physically and emotionally together. So I think that's what's happened. We're so dead set on being successful, that we've lost the sense of we can do that while still being, you know, a little bit more on the fun side.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So I spent a number of years in the corporate world, had the chance to, rise up within that. And I think that th- that's a general idea that we're throwing out. So like your company might be different. And I think some have leaned more into that over the years. But I think the word, I don't know if we said this word, but I'm going to say it now, is the idea of professionalism. And so the culture of professionalism. And I can tell you, I remember, I was flying around all the time, and regardless of what I was doing, I was, in my dress pants and my button down or polo if it's summertime and all that. And I remember when jeans started to become more acceptable. Like it seems that especially the last few years, we've become more casual. Um, and with that, I'm curious if we'll see some of that shift. But no, I think it's a great reminder. And I know we've jumped onto this. I think just because that's a pretty stark realization that I've not necessarily had. And so sometimes if we know something, we can then go attack it. So that's I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and
Um,
let me give you real quick, Zach, another
yeah.
example of that too, where I think that plays out. When we talk about stress and we talk about, mindset, um, most of our stress from work actually doesn't happen when we're working. It's when we're ruminating about work. So what
Mm,
happens is we leave the office or we stop work. Technically, we're playing with our kids in the playroom, but our to-do list isn't done. And because it's never done, right? I mean, phenomenal books like 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman and others, like, yeah, there's constant work to be done there. If you're not 100% present because part of your mind is still thinking about what you have to do, that's also going to hold you back from all those emotions and playfulness that you're going to have in the moment with your kid or whatever you might be doing. So I
right.
think that's the other key lesson is like, look, the to-do list is never going away. You could work forever. Um, but the more we can segment that out and clear our heads, that allows us the opportunity to be more present and be more silly with our kids.
So the fun part of this, I have so much joy doing this podcast, and I kind of forget that there's people that are going to listen to this. So when we talk, and I'm just pontificating, you know, um, don't worry, it's normal. My camera's not normal, so I'm gonna, do that. Um, I'm actually thinking about that right now because I've got, oh man, almost 10, which makes me both happy and sad. 10, 7, and 3 for my kids. And we actually have a lot of fun together. We laugh a lot. And um, I would say that that's been over the last few years as they've grown, but I've changed too. Different work environment, all that. I'm actually moving ahead, probably shouldn't be, but like when my kids aren't here, you know, am I making sure that I'm having that joy with my wife too, and that we're laughing? Um, so that's just kind of an interesting direction that I've gone. But no, I think I'm really interested in that. And then the sleep thing too. sometimes you don't feel very joyful and want to laugh when you're just always like, have these sweet bags under your eyes because of whatever we got going. So let's touch on the sleep piece real quick, and then there's a third one I want to hit on too. But so the sleep piece, this is a big area of, at least what I've seen, you know, difference of opinions as far as what you should get. Because you hear the 8 hours, but then you hear, some people can do better with 6. So like based on what you've researched, and for those listening, so we can be, get the info from Ryan. What is the thing around sleep? What should we be aiming for? What should we be looking at?
So there's obviously going to be outliers of some people that have, whether it's a different genetic disposition or other things, but for the most part, almost everyone listening, really a minimum of 7 hours is what's needed for recovery. So that 7 to 8 hour window is going to be the sweet spot for the bulk of just about everybody. Now, there are obviously exceptions. People can get away with less. And the key is to get a good set of different cycles of sleep. So getting that deep sleep, which happens typically earlier in the night. So after you fall asleep, you kind of get into slowly fall into a deeper sleep. And then you get into that deep sleep in that first hour and a half, 2 hours when you go to bed. And that's when you're really getting the recovery and when your brain is kind of washing things out. And then as you get closer to morning time, that's when you get the REM sleep. And that's when you have the vivid dreams and you kind of feel a little bit more active. And that's when our memory is actually storing things. And we remember those things that are, kind of happened to us in the previous day. So in terms of sleep, it's really about the quality as much as the quantity. And so, I think we've written extensively and there's a lot of information online, right? Setting the right environment, light and temperature and all that, making sure you're not going to bed after working out, not going to bed after drinking a lot of alcohol, because then you're actually more passing out than you are sleeping. But what I've found is, and this is what I think is most interesting. Everything online talks about being the 5 a.m. club, right? Or the 6 a.m. club and being the early riser to get ahead of the day. Everyone has a different, what's called a chronotype, right? Some people truly are morning people. Other people, that's going to crush them if they try to do that every day. But what no one talks about is going to bed at the same time 7 days a week. Because that consistency, that circadian rhythm that you set for yourself, that's what's going to give you the highest quality sleep. And the way I think about that is, look, we're all going to have fun. We're going to go out on some weekends, go to, date nights with our partners or whatnot. It's not going to be perfect, but you try to be consistent. And what I say is, don't stay up for anything that you wouldn't set your alarm to do in the morning. And by that, I mean, scrolling on your phone, binging Netflix. You wouldn't wake up to go watch a show on Netflix, right? So if you have something valuable to do, quality time with your partner, maybe you got to do work that you can't get rid of, that's fine. But if you realize, like, am I staying up? Would I wake up myself up to do what I'm doing right now, which is keeping me from going to bed? The answer is probably no. And then when you go to bed earlier, it doesn't matter if you're in the 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. club, you're going to feel a lot better when you wake up and the rest of your day is going to be set up for you.
Probably a lot more productive too. Because you might be not catching up on your Netflix series, but maybe that's reading a book. Maybe that's getting into your exercise, all those things. No, that's great. The consistency piece. Now, remind me on the cycles, how long is the typical or average sleep cycle?
So
Is it 90 minutes?
you're going to go through like 3 hour cycles and you go through multiple stages of sleep and every single night. But what's interesting is, and again, I can't pretend to be the expert here, but all the research we've read about from the experts, people likes to say, well, don't set an alarm because you should wake up naturally when your body wakes up. But if you go to bed at the same night consistently, your body will naturally create the cycle that makes sense for you. So if your kids start school like mine, I have to get her there by 7:30. If I have to get up at 6 to work out or whatever before I take her to school, as long as I get to bed at 10 or 10:30, whatever the right time is that I've decided for myself, if I stick with that schedule, my body will naturally wake itself up at the time I've kind of trained it to wake up, as so long as I'm getting enough sleep. So that's really the key and that's where that consistency comes in, that you can actually train your body to know what schedule you have to be on.
How do you untrain the body? Because right now my 3-year-old is trained to walk into a room at 1 a.m. every day out of nowhere.
Yeah. And
No,
how
that's so
different
true.
do you feel those next days, right? Like it's crazy how that, and that just shows you how important sleep is. I have the same thing with my 4-year-old. When he doesn't sleep, I'm like a zombie. And then when he does sleep through the night, I'm like, I feel like I could, take on the world.
Yeah. No, that's true. In our case, like he's had this is a thing that he started, oh man, I don't know, like a month ago. And so we're working to retrain him. He got sick is what started it, and that was a thing. But prior to that, we had a 14-year-old dog that for the last year has had his own things. So I don't know that I've slept in like a year, Ryan, but we're making do. We're making do. Um, no, that's really good. Guys, I always suggest I've read a couple of books on the sleep cycles, and looking at that too. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. Go read about it. There's always something to learn, but then also go test it because if you're in that zone where I kind of know, guys, like so go test it, see what works, and play with, how you feel the next day. And the reason I jumped on the sleep is because you and I, before we hit the record button, we're talking about, I mean, with 9 elements, there's a lot of things, but that's the point is like we say as dads, um, we don't have to be good at just one thing. We're kind of expected to be good, or we should want to be good at a lot of things, not just in the dad zone, but as men, because we're leaders at work. We're part of a team. Um, our body is important because we need to be able to move and stay in the fight, as we've talked about with our families. And so we need to make sure that we're doing things for ourselves, and it's ultimately going to stack. And so that's why I want to hit on those. The last one that I want to touch on, and then I have a final couple questions for you. The last one I want to touch on is the community thing, because with the kids at home, with the work, or the workouts, all the other pieces, sometimes that can be a challenge for some folks. And I know that you've got a story somewhat related to that. And in today's day and age, I mean, I looked at LinkedIn, and I'm seeing people starting new jobs in new cities, and it's kind of a hyper mobile culture over the last couple decades. It's much easier to move for a lot of people. Jobs moving around, and that can play into it as well. And as we get older, it's not always the easiest to rebuild that community. So I want to get your thoughts on what you've seen there and anything that you want to share on that.
Yeah. So for me personally, I think I mentioned I moved from LA, which I had been in California for 12, 13 years, to Florida. We moved because my in-laws were here. And as we were having the second kid, we just needed family for support. But it meant I was hitting the reset button personally and professionally. I didn't really even know anyone in Florida when we moved here. And losing that group of guys where we did barbecues, we did monthly dinners, we went on walks together, we surfed together, we worked out together. That was a really big deal, right? It was combined that as things were kind of being shut down. And it was just more like I had my nucleus of the family, which was great, but I, didn't really have that community. And it just shows how important that is for us to be open, to be vulnerable, to have someone to kind of talk to, and have that. I mean, that's why I appreciate what you're doing here, because it's just sharing with other guys that they're going through the same situation, right? Having that empathy to understand what it's like to be a dad, to try to push through tough times. I think I had mentioned to you starting this startup. I mean, previous to this, I was fairly successful, running a 180 person startup that had raised tens of millions of dollars out in LA and working in venture capital and whatnot. And that's when my wife met me and married me. And now I'm doing this like startup that's not quite bringing in the same amount of money. And, you know, those things can be, if you don't have a strong network, if you're maybe not where you were professionally in the grand scheme of things, and you're taking a hit to that ego, that can be a big deal if you're going through that by yourself. And I think it's really important to kind of find those groups of guys that have similar values. And so we have found a group of guys here in Tampa where every other Thursday we go on a 6 a.m. walk together. It's not coffee, it's not dinner, it's not happy hour, there's no drinking. Because what we found is when you move and you're kind of just walking next to each other, you're actually more apt to be open than when you're face to face with someone, kind of putting each other on the spot. And there's no, so it's like we just, hey guys, what are you celebrating? What are you navigating? This kind of comes from a group called Man Morning out of LA that was doing this, and I really appreciate those guys. And that's been pretty huge because it's amazing how open guys will be, even if you don't know each other that well, when you feel that, hey, we're on the same team. We're all trying to get to the same place. We're just trying to help each other, and we're out walking along the water at sunrise. Just the rest of your day just feels better when you have that kind of start to the day and that kind of community.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, not just for me and for you, but Derek Thompson just wrote this article about the antisocial uh, century that we've had. As we have, there's three types of connection. You have your intimate connection, your household, typically your family, or if you don't have family, whoever your partner might be, your community, and then global. And in today's day
Mhm.
and age with online, the internet and with social media, the global community is always connecting, although not in person. And then you're tight knit home. But we've kind of lost that sense of community, right? We get takeout food instead of going out to eat. We kind of skip out on some events, that we didn't used to, or have the same situation I did where we don't have that community. And that community is what's built trusts, what builds tolerance, and builds stronger societies. And so I think it's really, really important that even people that don't think like you, right, to kind of connect with those people and to have a strong community is something we need to rebuild. There's three types of connection. You have your intimate connection, your household, typically your family, or if you don't have family, whoever your partner might be, your community, and then global. And in today's day
Mhm.
and age with online, the internet and with social media, the global community is always connecting, although not in person. And then you're tight knit home. But we've kind of lost that sense of community, right? We get takeout food instead of going out to eat. We kind of skip out on some events, that we didn't used to, or have the same situation I did where we don't have that community. And that community is what's built trusts, what builds tolerance, and builds stronger societies. And so I think it's really, really important that even people that don't think like you, right, to kind of connect with those people and to have a strong community is something we need to rebuild.
Yeah. Uh, to tie in a couple of things we talked about, when you're on those walks and people get to know each other, they start to, share about what's going on because that's relationship. That's what friends do. We're going to encourage each other, challenge each other, understand what's going on. We can't do that if we don't know what's going on. Um, but do you laugh a little bit more when you're with that group too? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think because you can be more open and you can be more vulnerable, you do laugh. You get more emotions either way.
Yeah.
And what I found is, even though I had that group of guys pretty much my whole life, a good group of friends, and we all grew up, whatever. I played a lot of sports, and you have those group of guys in high school, college. I look back and I'm like, how many of my conversations were about sports, right, or about girls, or about something, right? And you kind of realize, like, God, I had a lot of superficial conversations or relationships to some regard. And I think now, as we're deepening that, it's kind of like, why wasn't I asking more of what's going on in his life? Right? What is he
Mhm.
going through? Um, and I think the more you kind of are interested in other people, and then you get that back to yourself. That's been pretty key. There's a great book by David Brooks, How to Know Someone. It's his latest book. It's phenomenal because it just challenges you to ask one more question. And it doesn't matter if it's the person serving you your Starbucks or your good friend that you're with. How are we connecting with people at a deeper level? Um, Rather than just being like, hey, the Cavs won again last night. That's pretty exciting. That type.
No, it's important. I've been surprised that not as challenging um, to have somebody start talking to you if you are authentic and it's not like we're trying to have like a sit down psychotherapy session or anything like that. It's just straight up like, hey, how you doing? What's going on in your life? And it can be awkward because we're not used to it. But to your point, I think it's really important that we switch that around. And as we've said before, if this is the first time on the podcast and you're listening and you're still here, thank you. But the other thing that we're doing, especially like what your kids are going to see, your son may not recognize it now, but your daughter's getting to the age where she's going to see it and she knows about your walks, is that she's seeing you in a community, and she's seeing what that can look like, at least a portion of it. But when we have those friends around us at home, they can see interacting with other adults. They can see what it's like to have community and the importance of it. So they're going to pick up on those things of positive community, and because who we're around is going to influence who we are, and it's going to impact. Our environment can impact that, but we can also impact our environment with what we bring to the table. We just got to make sure we're showing up, and it's not just for us. We're also showing that for our kids is my main point. So, I think that's fantastic that that you're doing that, and I'm glad you found it. And I'd encourage anybody else to go after finding a group like that. If you can't find one, make one. You can do it. You can do it. Um, all right. Last question, not necessarily related to the nine kind of elements of health that you guys have outlined. Now, I guys, I'd say go check out. I'll say it again at the end. I'll put it in the show notes. But where's your website? Where can you guys go and find more about what you're laying out there with Thrive?
Yeah, if you go to thrive25.com, it showcases what we're building with our new membership, gets into a lot of the science, which we didn't really touch upon in terms of like how to understand your blood work and actually get a little bit more in depth to optimize your health. So that's kind of what we're building. But if you put in these notes, newsletter.thrive25.com, there's 420 newsletters of our archive that are all available to be read. Everything from how much protein should I eat? How should I exercise? Everything we talked about, right? All those 9 elements are there, and you can search all different types of topics there. So that's what we've written so far. And then if you just go to thrive25.com, really, really excited to share the community we're building for a paid membership to really give you a blueprint to optimize your health.
Yeah. Custom blueprints are always good because we're all different people. And so that always helps. That's good to know about the newsletter because it's a limited time podcast. These are discussions that really could have all sorts of depth to them that we could go in on individual. I mean, you could do an episode on an individual thing, just to break it down. But I want to switch a little bit to the dad hat and, since you become a dad and you shared some of that when you moved, you had your second son. And I think back to being serious, we have professional work. We bring that home. There's a lot more as we grow as adults. We have responsibility. That's a real thing, right? There's more weighing on us. When we can tap into the healthy side, sometimes those things aren't as heavy as maybe they would be if we're not. But what are a couple of things that you've learned in your experience as dad that you would share with somebody else that's about to be a dad or is even alongside you on that walk that you're not talking to yet, but just some takeaways from your own experience that you've learned as dad?
Yeah, it's a great question. Appreciate that. There's 2 things that come to mind that I think I've learned, especially with my daughter, who's now 7, where I've changed how I interact with her and hopefully been better, both from what I've read and just realizing what works. First, I was really pushed to succeed academically. And, we live in a very competitive world, right? Whether, depending upon where you live, what schools you want to go to, how advanced, everyone's competing with everyone at an earlier age than ever. And I think I've realized like that is a fool's errand and everyone's going to learn based on who they are. And what I really want to position with my children are the social values and the social cues to really develop and be able to engage with adults, engage with other people, be a good friend, have that empathy. All the values we've been talking about on this show are really where we've been prioritizing that much more than pushing them to create stress for a second grader on how she's doing, learning the technical skill set that she will inevitably get. So that's one thing. And I think the second piece tied to that is there's so much research, I really have never wanted to be, a parent that's so involved. You feel like you're pushing them and enabling them and doing that. These kids have their own personalities. They're going to develop who they are. And you want to give them the space to do that. But also, like Jonathan Haidt talks about, give them the space just to make mistakes, be a little bit in a situation where they got to figure it out on their own and let them be kids. And so I think I was a little bit too tight knit, too close on that. And I've really, let them figure things out a little bit more on their own. And humans are going to, most of the time they're going to make the right decisions. They're going to figure out, they're going to become stronger on the other side for that. So the more I've taken a step back and just created a safe, loving environment, but not being in their face on anything, I think we've seen a positive response from them.
So if I'm hearing right, you're working to help them interact in a positive way and be comfortable interacting with other people socially and engaging in that way, and how to think critically and learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's a great summary. Absolutely.
Done. I think that's fantastic. The and it's hard to do at times, the whole helicopter parenting portion, and there's a whole definition we probably have to break out on that. But I do think I'm with the learning from mistakes piece, they're going to learn, they're going to have them eventually. So I'm with you on that, because I want them to be able to have them now, as long as there's nobody's in danger of getting harmed, really hurt, or something massively destroyed. You know, there's so many lessons in failure, and as we get more serious as adults and we try to be so perfect, there's so many opportunities that we can learn from in that failure. And hey, guys, as dads, and we're on here, I do this so I can learn from other guys like you, like Ryan, because I'm not getting everything right, but I can take something from someone's story and say, you know what? Okay, that's something to look into. And then I actually know something I can go and tackle and apply and see if it makes it better. Because there's no book on it. And I think those are really good things. Learning how to engage with people, not just having friends on social media that you never talk to, and how to think critically and learn from our mistakes. Those are awesome, dude. Um, Love it. Well, you guys are doing great things over there as you get kicked off Thrive 25. So that you got a lot of resources, information out there. You're building a community now. So I'd recommend anybody go that's interested. Um, we should all be interested in our health. And if we're not, reconsider it, because we want to be around for all those times to continue to be there for our kids, for our wives, and for ourselves, so we can go have some fun. Life is too short. Um, but I just appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you, tackling it, sharing some of the stories that you've had. I know there's a lot more in there. But ultimately, I want to say thank you for joining me on this podcast, and maybe we can do it again, see how that community is growing, and dive into some more of these topics a little more in depth.
That'd be great. I appreciate it, Zach. Yeah, we're super excited about it. I agree. I couldn't think more. I mean, I think what hit me when my son was born, I realized I was going to be 58 when he graduated high school. And I was like, I got to do something different to make sure I'm not what, maybe our mindset was a 58-year-old looks and acts like. I'm going to still be playing sports with him and challenging him in every single way when he's there. And so that's really what we're doing. And we're making sure people have the ideas to say, how are we putting all of these things that could kill us, or all these diseases, or all these things that are going to slow us down? Let's take care of that now when we're 40, so we don't have those issues down the road.
Well said. Well said. We have some of the power to do that. Just don't go into the problem, take care of ourselves. That's great, man. No, I appreciate it, Ryan. And all the best with what you're doing. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Zach.
You bet. Well, guys, if you made it this far in the podcast, I just want to say thank you for listening along. And that also means that you've had something that's clicked, that you've taken away. I know I have. I always take these notes. I've got a whole list of things here. But a couple of things that really stuck out to me. I'm really liking how when we look at the health aspect, it can mean a lot of different things. But within this circle of health, all those different things are connected in some way. And so there's some foundational pieces that we can look at if we're working to stay in that fight and continue to build more skills as our kids get older, as we change, as we grow, both professionally and personally. There's things that we can do. And so there's people like Ryan and his team that have laid out some structure to that make it easier. We don't have to go do all the research and start all over from ground zero. But we can step in with them and say, hey, I'm ready to go do something about this. What can I do? So go check that out. But the other thing that stuck with me too is the joy piece. Man, the laughter of kids. I said this to my wife the other day, and it was, I can tell you, I wasn't necessarily feeling joy, but I caught myself. It was just chaos. It was all forms of noise was happening. Every single kid was talking, half of it was laughing and it was just loud and we had music going, but we were also trying to get something done. And I was just like, whoa, this is just an ambiance of like massive noise. And then I stopped. I said, man, I'm going to miss this noise when it's not around. That silence is going to be loud. So if you find yourself in those positions, jump in, have some fun with them, laugh. If you're feeling frowny in the morning, smile, make yourself smile, because you can trick your brain into thinking you're actually happier, and then you become happier. So it's amazing. But that really stuck with me. So hopefully you've had some laughs on this. Hopefully you've had some good takeaways. I know I have, but ultimately, if you think of somebody else that you think could benefit from this, please share it with them. I'd love to hear what takeaways you had, and or if you applied it, what you found. So you can message me through Instagram at SkilledDad. You can email hello@skilledad.com. But ultimately, I hope that you take something today that you can apply and then go take some action on in your life and your journey to becoming the skilled dad.